Good evening. Welcome to the July 18th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you're with us tonight, whether here in council chambers or on television. And as is our tradition, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Here.
Commissioner Go-Martin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Tully,
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Here. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you all. For those in council chambers, there are copies of the agenda on either side of the room and those shelves if you'd like to have a copy and follow along. Item 3 on our agenda is minutes of previous council meetings. Is there a motion concerning them?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the July 11th, 2023 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Item 4, public comments portion of the meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where we entertain public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. As a reminder, during a little bit later in the meeting, we'll be moving over to the committee room and discussing some long-range planning. So if you have items you want to mention that are not on the agenda and you don't expect us to cover in long-range planning, please come on down to the podium.
Bicycles are on the agenda, right?
Bike and pedestrian planning questions are, yes. Okay, we'll move on then to the consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That too passes unanimously. Item 6 is our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we plan to take action on items previously discussed at least once, sometimes multiple times. Is there a motion concerning Chapter 14?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 14 of the Downers Grove Municipal Code as presented.
Second.
Comments or questions from the audience on this item? Comments or questions from the council on this item? Rose, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Commissioner Go-Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye. That motion passes 7-0. Is there a motion concerning traffic calming measures?
Mayor, I move that the council authorize staff to pursue traffic calming measures on Fairmount Avenue as follows. The installation of enhanced speed limit signs, use of speed feedback signs on a rotating basis, increased enforcement efforts to deter violations of the posted limits, review snow and ice control procedures related to the south leg of the intersection at 55th Street and Fairmount Avenue, and review recommendations from Neighborhood Traffic Study Number 9 once completed, which includes the Fairmount Avenue from 55th Street to 59th Street, and will be considering potential signage or other countermeasures to address the occurrence of crashes on a downslope during winter conditions.
Second.
Okay, just to clarify for everyone before we begin discussion, this has been discussed a couple of times here and at TAP. This motion tonight is the motion that is in the agenda packet absent the installation of paving striping. So it is all the bullet items listed in the packet except for paving striping. Any comments from the audience? Comments or questions from the council? Rose, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Commissioner Go-Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Is there a motion concerning the extension of a special use?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance authorizing the second extension of special use ordinance number 5817 to permit an accessory parking lot use before the principal use is established at 3131 Finley Road to July 19th, 2024, as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the audience on this item? Comments or questions from the council? Rosa, please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose,
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Commissioner Go-Martin,
Aye.
Mayor Barnett.
Aye. That too passes unanimously, 7-0. That takes us to item 7 on our agenda, which would be our first reading. We do not have any first reading items tonight. Neither is there a mayor's report, item number 8. So we'll go to council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report out on goings-on in the community, other entities or groups or events that they might be wanting the community to know about. And we'll start with Commissioner Davenport.
Sure, just one thing. Sidewalk sale Thursday through Saturday in downtown Downers Grove. So get out and shop. Thank you.
Thank you. Danny?
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Leslie?
No report. Thank you, Mayor.
Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to, on a sadder note, note the passing of Doris May Hawk Mokel. Obviously, Doris Mokel and the Mokel family have a long, steep history, rich history in Downers Grove. The Mokel family, I think the last street that the village named after a historic family was Mokel Drive. So we're saddened by the passing of Doris Mokel at age 96. She was also not only a great member of the long line of Mokels in Downers Grove, but also a big fan and contributor to our community during the time that she was here, and we're all the better for it. Finally, she was also a big supporter and friend to historic preservation, for which, again, not only do we currently benefit from that, but future generations will for a long time. So I just wanted to remark on the passing of Doris Mokel and give our best wishes and prayers and condolences to John Mokel and the rest of her family and the Mokel family even more broadly. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Martin. Chris?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Greg?
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, the manager's report tonight will kick off with Mr. Baker giving us a Civic Center update.
Yes, indeed. A brief update on the Civic Center project. As the structure has taken shape over the past couple of months, that has allowed the construction crews to focus on the interior of the building with the systems really being built out, including mechanical, plumbing, and electrical. Also a significant amount of work in the parking lots with the curbs being installed, and the sub-base for the permeable paver area also installed. In the coming weeks, we will see masonry work begin on the building, and this project remains on schedule and under budget. Now, go to the video that showcases a lot of this work.
Thank you, Mike. Dave, before we take a brief pause here, do you have anything else on the manager's report?
No further report, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. The balance of the manager's report, this portion of our agenda, we'll conduct in the committee room. We're going to talk about long-range planning, as well as some trends and issues, adjustments, or updates. So we'll take about a 3 to 5 minute break. We're going to meet over in the committee room, and all are welcome to join us over there. Thank you. Tonight's meeting is continuation of our long-range planning process. It is the first meeting of what we call, where we start talking about high-priority action items. That's what we refer to them as. This is the work plan, the specific work plan items that we are going to try and accomplish in the next 2-ish years. And it's sort of an opportunity for council members to get things that are on their mind and priorities that they have onto the table for discussion. There are, as you might suspect, an awful lot of things that happen as running a village that aren't necessarily voluntary, and those tend to consume our time. But anytime we have a chance to go through this process, we like to take input from the community and take input from all these folks who are trying to serve their community by getting their ideas on the table. Tonight is the first of probably 3 meetings on this. It could turn into more than 3, but right now we're planning on 3. And the point tonight is really throwing the spaghetti on the wall, see what sticks kind of. It is not a discussion of merit tonight, or capacities, or even timetables. It is a, what ideas do we want to get on the list of things to talk about? 3 weeks from now, we meet in August, our intention is to meet again and start that process of, okay, with this defined list, feeding through prioritization, and do things have enough support to even make the list and stay on it. But tonight, it's a free-flowing, any ideas that council members have, we want to get them on the list, and then when we get done, we'll open it up to the audience a little bit for commentary as well. So, that's what we're up to tonight. Dave, you want to add to that?
That is a great intro, Mayor. It's great to see a lot of public out here, too. I see members of environmental groups. We see members of the bicycle club group here, so thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. Before we get into the priority actions, as Mayor Barnett introduced, I just want to call everybody's attention to a one-page addendum to report number 3, which was a report on trends and issues. It's just a real quick read. We're not going to receive the loan from the IEPA for water system improvements, so there's a couple of step strategy to readdress that with a new rate study in the coming years. So that's all online and in the packet. I just wanted to make sure everybody saw that. Okay, potential priority actions, as the mayor said, we're just getting a list. Tonight we're developing a list for future consideration at the upcoming meetings. As a starting point, in the long-range planning report, we have already identified 14 potential priority action items for future consideration, and I will just go through them tonight. And for those following along here in the room, it's in the written report, and for those watching at home, it's on the online agenda materials. The first is what we call FRSP, Facilities Replacement and Sustainability Plan. We now refer to it as the Civic Center Project. We just got an update from Deputy Manager Baker in the council chambers on this. Why is this still on the list? There's still a lot of work to be done. Most of the policy making has been done, but there are a couple policy decisions coming in front of the council in the coming months, including selecting a developer and a land use for Lot 2 on this property that is intended to be developed by a private sector developer. So that's a big policy issue coming to the council in a few months. We also have to decommission these 2 buildings and actually demolish them and move operations into the new building. And as you saw, while we are on schedule, there's still a lot of work to be done in the actual construction. So this project will be, our portion of it will be completed in 2024. The redevelopment of Lot 2 is scheduled for completion in 2026. This IP on the whiteboard here represents in progress. Obviously, I already started this. Implementing our ERP system, Enterprise Resource Planning. This is a multi-year project that should finish up by the end of this year. We just have a couple more modules to do. Update our building codes, also in progress, to make sure that we keep in good standing with FEMA and the ISO group in terms of insurance ratings, and just to keep current on our building codes for a safe environment. It's time for us to update our building codes. That has already started at the staff level. The community engagement will start soon, and by the end of the year, the council will have the opportunity to direct us on changes and updates to our building codes. Another one that's in progress is a lead service line replacement plan. This one is also required by the state of Illinois. Starting in 2027, all municipalities must have a plan in place for the systemic replacement of existing lead service lines. This is already in progress. We've started an inventory of lead service lines. Early next year, the council will see the first iteration of a preliminary plan. It's the next iteration of the village council that will put the finishing touches on the final plan. Review diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. This has been on our list and in progress for a couple of years now. This project today has focused on internal activities of the village as an employer and a place of employment, focusing primarily on attraction, retention, hiring practices, looking for a more diverse makeup of our staff. We've had huge successes here. If you're interested in learning more about this, you can check out last year's annual report, 2022 annual report. There's some great statistics. Frankly, this has become sort of baked into how we roll and how we operate at the village, so whether it's on or not on a list,
we will continue to pursue these. It's really part of how we roll them out. Also in progress, recently started the Meadowbrook Shopping Center Tax Increment Finance District and Redevelopment Agreement. The village will be assisting financially with the revitalization of that aging center. Council previously provided direction on that. This project, in terms of the creation of the TIP district and execution of the redevelopment agreement, should be wrapped up by late this year, 2023, or very early 2024. The remainder of the potential projects, we have talked about most of them in the previous 3 LRP, long-range planning reports. One is public safety pension stabilization. This is the idea of smoothing by the impact of the required contributions to these funds, smoothing the impacts on the taxpayers who support it by either creating a stabilization fund or policy or both. This was discussed a couple of LRP meetings ago. Also previously discussed is the idea of extending the existing Ogden Avenue Tax Increment Financing District just to allow us to spend the fund balance that will be in place at the time it expires. The extension, any money that comes in, any increment that comes in after the original completion date will be declared surplus and distributed to the other taxing bodies. This just gives us time to spend down the money that's in the fund at the time that it will expire. We also previously talked about the idea of changes to our commuter parking system, of converting the Fairview station and the Belmont station from quarterly permit system to a daily fee system, and monitoring the Main Street campus, parking campus, and making a future determination on that. This next one is a really big one. Implementation of the comprehensive plan recommendations for the Fairview area, focus area. Our 2017 comprehensive plan gives us recommendations and directions on how to revitalize, rejuvenate, and really make changes to this area around the Fairview train station. There's a write-up in it in our materials here. This is similar to the revitalization efforts that the village shepherded starting in the downtown from the late 1990s through about 2 years ago. So this is a, I think, couple decades project, but this is something that if we were to get going on, would be on our work plan starting as soon as possible. We also previously discussed the idea of creating a community grants program, perhaps grounded in the community grants program that we operated up through 2010. This is a project that would provide village funding on a competitive basis to not-for-profit agencies for support of their operations and mission that would be consistent with some of the village policy outcomes. Environmental sustainability plan. This is the idea that we would create an environmental sustainability plan that would be based on the Greenest Region Compact framework. This was discussed at our last long-range planning meeting, and you'll see in the written report, we took direction from the council at that meeting. This project may also include engaging the Environmental Concerns Commission, hiring professional staff with expertise in the environmental area, and perhaps we added also, depending on the scope of this plan, if we pursue it, perhaps even a consultant might be part of that team who would help us prepare and launch that plan. Updating the comprehensive plan. We did a comprehensive update to that plan in 2011, and then we updated it again in 2017, and we're due for another update. This is a planning document that addresses everything from transportation to land use to public facilities to open space, you name it, by its name, comprehensive. This is a project that if we were directed to undertake an update to this, we would probably engage a consultant to help us on this, or two, maybe, depending on the scope, as we did in 2011 and 2017. Related to that is the idea of updating our bike and pedestrian plan. There's been several conversations by this council of the importance of providing a safe transportation network for all users, particularly bicyclists and pedestrians. We did a bike and ped plan in 2013. Just based on council direction and communication in the last couple of months, it's clearly time for us to consider updating that. So that is on the potential list as well. If we were to undertake this, a consultant is probably in order. Those of you around back then know that Sam Schwartz Consulting helped us prepare. That was the lead on the preparation of the 2013 plan. So these are 14 potential priority actions that have already been identified by this council or staff or a combination thereof, and it would be a great starting point for tonight's discussion. Mayor?
Okay, so the process tonight is just to go through and hear people talk. We, just like with whatever we come up with tonight, we're not going to discuss the merits of any of these things. All of the, at least in theory, all of those not marked with an IP could be something we ended up not doing. We'll have that discussion with whatever else is added to the list the next 2 meetings or so. So I think to do this, I'd like to just go around the table, because I think that's probably just easiest, and then what I'm going to do is, at the end, probably, my guess is probably not say much, because I suspect everybody will have hit my bullets, but we'll just go around the table and start with Danny.
All right. Yeah, I guess of the 14, obviously staff has done a great job getting the ball rolling on the initial 6. There's a few that I wanted to touch on, and starting with the Fairview Focus area implementation. This one first came across my radar when a specific business that I thought might fit the area and bring some more vibrancy in that direction wasn't able to actually go there because of the zoning, and I had spoke to staff about it and found out that it was part of a bigger discussion, which I was very happy to hear. But I think this is huge. I think this is a great opportunity to connect the downtown to the Fairview corridor, you know, by over there by Rogers. And I also think that there's we almost need to do this in order to save that train station over there that's not going to be getting as much utilization. Especially, you know, now that we're going to be talking about the possible converting the parking lot over there as well. So I'm very interested to start talking about that. I'm looking forward to that. I also wanted to touch on one item that is on our current priority action item list, and it's actually listed as completed. And that's the downtown outdoor dining, which we had implemented for the temporary solutions for the restaurants. I'd like to see that go a little further and encourage and potentially incentivize some of these establishments to implement a permanent solution. That is potentially more aesthetically pleasing. This could include, you know, public or private space, or the combination thereof. I've seen, you know, this done in a couple other towns that have done it really, really well, and one that's in progress right now. And I think it's going to be huge for luring these folks that are potentially leaving the more urban areas, like downtown Chicago. And then I also, another one of our current priority action items.
Danny, before you go there, just
Yep.
you and I talked before, could you talk about that vision of maybe trading parking spaces for wider sidewalks, et cetera, that kind of topic?
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, the way it is set up right now, I feel like it's a little uncomfortable when you're walking through downtown, you know, and you're walking through people's tables. I think there's an opportunity you know, I know that a lot of people think there's not enough parking down there, but I would disagree. I would think that if we were able to use some of those parking spots and expand their outdoor dining areas, this would leave more room for people to actually walk, and more comfortable for people who wanted to dine. And then lastly, another item that was currently on our priority action item list was tabled in December, was to consider allowing video gaming for restaurants with on-premise consumption liquor license. And I think that I'd like to propose untabling this item. And I think that it would provide a lot of value to establishments that are currently operating in our town that might be outside of the downtown area, in areas like the Ogden Avenue corridor, 75th, 63rd, all areas that we've identified that we'd like to attract businesses to. And obviously, there would be financial benefit to them and to us as the municipality from that. There's fees associated. There's a share of the earnings from that, and potentially this could be used to fund initiatives like our other potential priority action item, the community grants program. So I think that like the stigma behind people being against this is kind of going away. And I feel like gambling is so mainstream right now. There's all these, every organization, including Disney for one, is realizing and looking to monetize it. So I just don't want to be the last one to jump on that revenue stream. So yeah, and that pretty much rounds it out.
You good with your notes? Leslie?
Yep, and I ditto the things that Danny added. One thing that I would like to see come back is a potential private tree ordinance. We talked a lot about it 2 years ago, kind of discussed at least enough to make it more of an awareness issue where, we would at least require a certified arborist to submit a plan so that we could minimize the loss of trees and potentially come up with a fund then to help us with replacements and even, some of our other environmental issues. So I really want to see that move forward again. I would also love to see us think about some inclusive housing practices. I know that recently, for example, Naperville passed a voluntary inclusive housing process, so people could choose to participate in it, and in return they would either get a reduced permit fee or a fast track permit. So I would like to see us figure out if we could do some sort of voluntary program where we could think about making our housing more affordable in Downers Grove, and that really wouldn't even be limited to even some of our zoning practices in terms of whether it be side-by-sides or up and downs in some of our residential areas. So kind of like to take a comprehensive look at how we could have some lower entry points into the village for our folks. And then the other one is I would love to revisit our sign ordinance. I want to see both a revisitation of digitization. For example, we always talk about parking. We've got plenty of parking. It's just that people don't know when they can park in lots and where there are open spots. And I feel like that could take care of some of those issues, and also help with some of the emergency, response things with the schools and whatnot. There's so much technology out there now that I don't think it looks like now what it looked like the first time we discussed this. And then also incorporating into that public art murals. I do want to see us allow that moving forward, and have a little bit more creative expression. I know people worry or go to worst case scenario with some of those, but again, we're really talking about businesses that have invested in Downers Grove. A lot of those small business owners live here, and I don't think anybody's going to want to put something up that is going to turn people away from their business and put a bad image for Downers Grove. So those are the 3 things that I was interested in adding. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Greg?
Mayor, I have nothing. I'll make that one. Looking forward to talking about pretty much everything up there. I could do probably 10 minutes on each one of them right now, but that's not tonight's role. I have nothing.
I got that.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess first, just to echo the same around Fairview. I think that's an important initiative. And as the village manager mentioned, a decade, and I think now is the time to get on that. For me, I think the most important initiative that I want to see is tied to the bike and ped plan. I view it, I think, a little different than just updating the bike and ped plan. I think we've done some updates over the last 2000, 2013. We've had some mention of it in the comprehensive plan. I see it more as setting the vision for what it looks like to make it a priority in what we do. So when I think about what that initiative might look like, it's really mapping out how we can be more focused on non-motorized traffic. That is not just bikes. I think that's an important piece, but also pedestrian, and how we transform, candidly, our village into what I would consider more of a pedestrian-first community. There's lots of reasons why. I think we're going to have other discussions around this in the coming weeks, but I think I can't think of an initiative that touches all of our overall goals in as much as the idea of providing the safety, the environmental friendliness, the economic boost, that just becoming a more bike and pedestrian friendly. But it's important that it's not just, in my view, a plan. I think that's where we have to create the vision. We have to start with what that looks like, and then really put those things into action, because I appreciate the staff's efforts over the years to implement many of these ideas in sort of a spot way. I don't really feel like we have a full comprehensive view of what we could do. And in 10 years, I think lots have changed. This topic has garnered a lot of interest, and someone mentioned technology and process and things like that. I'm very interested to hear what more we could do. I'm realistic in some of the restraints that we have as a village, but I think it's time to think big about this. I think we owe it to the future generations, and it's important to me that we not just write this down, but we look at it as a living document that we can implement in the years and decades to come. So that's extremely important to me. I will also say, again, a lot of these we'll continue to talk about. Community grants is also very important. I want to relook at how we've been doing that in the past. I've got some ideas that we'll get to, but I think that's a very important one. And I'm interested in understanding how we can use things like the comprehensive plan update, as well as the Fairview Focus area, and tie those into some of the things we're talking about, outdoor dining, even the bike and ped. So how we can connect those will be important. So I don't think there's anything on the list.
Go farther right, move this left.
Currently, private tree. Thank you, Commissioner Sadowski. I think that's an important one too. So I think that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Any other commentary on deliverables? I want to make sure I understand what the deliverables are. You and I talked previously.
Yeah, so I think for the next, for this initiative, I think it's a plan working with consultants and our team to sort of map out what the opportunities would be like for us to, just be more friendly is such a light word. To be pedestrian first, maybe is the way to look at it. Hopefully that's clear enough for you. Okay.
Good. Mike?
Thank you. So there's nothing that we haven't talked about so far that I'm not 100% on board with. I guess I'm most excited right now about the Fairview Focus area, and my thought there is that it's a wonderful opportunity to be as an incubator, if you will, for ideas, and I don't want to use I'm not going to use the word. I'm going to just to say that it's a great place to try to implement some new ideas and see what works well, and hopefully a lot of what comes out of that are things that we can apply elsewhere in town. I think having so many of these things that we're talking about, and I've got a list here. things, I got elected this year, so there were some campaign issues, right? Things I talked to people about, and ideas that I had accumulated over my many decades working and living here in town. It seems to me, though, there's so many things, and as I go through them, are interconnected. So, for instance, as we talk about Fairview Avenue and what we can do there, I think it's absolutely vital that there be some sort of a physical a connection between that area and the downtown by virtue of a bike path or pedestrian path with nice landscaping, lighting, something that invites you to walk along that path and it helps you realize actually how close they are to each other, geographically. I mean, I always think of them as these different places, but in fact they're really close, and so I think we can, by putting some sort of physical connection there, seems like it'd be pretty easy to do too, easy relatively speaking, because the village owns so much property right now along the tracks, north of the tracks, both at Fairview coming a little bit west and then going east, and we've talked about parking at the train stations. So we certainly could afford to give up a little bit along, is it Roger Street, or not, right on the north side of Burlington, on Burlington. So I also like getting more specific about this. I'm a runner. I'm on the paths all the time. Sometimes I'm texting photos to Dave as I'm running along. This needs some work. This needs some work. But one thing I can tell you is that I generally run to other towns, or I go to other towns to do my runs or my biking. And I don't think that we necessarily have to think about completely reinventing the wheel here. There's all kinds of regional paths and paths in neighboring towns that are coming up to or in close proximity to our village limits that we could easily extend, make a connection to, and it would have a greater impact as opposed to us just looking at what we're doing internally. So it kind of needs to have more of a regional view, I believe. I love the idea of a pedestrian-first community, because that relates too to what you were talking about, Danny, downtown, and something that was on my hit list of the downtown dining. When we we have to give up some parking, but when we start thinking about pedestrian first, right? What's safest for the people sitting there eating? I don't know about you, but I just don't. It doesn't. I like what we did. It was during the pandemic. I mean, made a lot of sense. But now it kind of feels like a bit of a hangover that needs to be, something needs to be more permanent and attractive and safe for the people dining downtown. And that does not, what we have right now just doesn't sit well with me. And so that's connected, right? Yes to video gaming, perhaps not downtown, but I think that, that's, we already have it here in town. Everyone has a phone. If I was king for a day, there'd probably be no video gaming. I don't buy lottery tickets. It's not my thing. But it is for a lot of other people. They enjoy it, and it's readily available, and it already exists in our unincorporated areas. It exists in towns adjacent to us, and actually in pretty unobtrusive sort of ways. It's not the slots. It's so I think it's something that will need regulation, right? So that it's a right fit for Downers Grove. But I think that there's a revenue stream there that we're missing out on, and then just a fundamental right for most Illinoisans that we're denying our residents here in Downers Grove. And it's going to be at American Legion. So just kind of going through here, we talked about building code a little bit, and I'm glad we're updating our building codes, because we're working off the 2015 IRC right now, and in conjunction with that, there's also some stormwater regs that we've had in place for several years, And I think it's high time that we take a look at some of that, particularly when it comes to, you know, a lot of the work that I do as an architect, doing additions for folks. We have this a requirement for underground detention if you have a 400 square foot or larger addition. I think that makes a lot of sense, actually, in some of our R4 zone districts. But unlike the way we treat zoning with everything else, setbacks increase, lot coverage changes, height changes based on the size of your lot, R1, R2, R3, R4 districts. There isn't that same feel, that same sort of flexibility when it comes to the stormwater management. And when if I have a really large site, the need for doing some of the stormwater work that we're doing isn't as great as it is on a smaller site. Also depends on the area of town you're in. So here's another confluence of ideas, and that we talk about tree canopy and wanting to do something about that. How about offering people the opportunity to save trees instead of cut them down, in lieu of putting in some underground detention that disturbs roots and things. There's some. What I'm saying is that we had a good first start with the regulations, but there's some nuance to what we've learned a lot in the last several years, and I would like for the staff to be able to spend a little time tweaking some of this. So a lot of zoning things. We used to have incentives like facade improvement grants downtown. So I'm not sure that I want to bring that back, but the idea of it was to encourage businesses to do things to improve the look of their businesses.
You want it on the list, right? You
Yeah.
want to write that one down?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that, just as if nothing else other than a placeholder, right? For the idea, as I look at the downtown buildings, we love the overall feel of our downtown, right? I think that's something, we love getting together downtown. We just had Grow Fest. We like dining downtown. But when you look at some of those individual buildings, I think that, there's some room for improvement and aesthetically. And I think eventually, the market may drive some of that, but we certainly could get out in front of it and help to steer some of it, encourage some of that. Sorry, I've got a whole list. So you're talking about neighborhoods, talking about downtown and the feel that we have downtown. When I used to be chair of our, we used to call it the Architectural Design Review Board, Historic Preservation Commission, we explored the idea of what we called neighborhood conservation districts a while back. And I'd like to bring back some discussion about that. The idea is you look at different areas in town, and what is it about that neighborhood? You can probably relate to it from a historical standpoint, right? You start talking about historical districts, people kind of know what that's about. So you can think about this, what else is it about the neighborhood, the community, that really identifies its character, right? So it could be the size of the homes, and we try to do this with our zoning. It could be the type of, it could be the amount of setback, could be the one-story, two-story, front porches, no front porches, whatever. But identifying some of those characteristics of neighborhoods that we love, and trying to do something about preserving that element of that thing that's tying everything together. So I want to throw that one out. This is a throw everything on the, you said spaghetti, so
That's exactly what it is.
So I'm doing it.
That's the point of tonight.
Yeah, so when we talk about affordable housing, means different things to different people, certainly. I look at it as kind of all price points. So, and I think that part of the concern we have here in town is that, yes, we want to have some concern for the least amongst us and make sure that there's a place for them and to take care of them. And part of the community grants program, bringing that back, helps with that as well. But looking at price points all the way up and down the line. So, and I think that there's a feeling like I mean, we're getting so many $1 million plus homes, and you know, the housing stock's gradually becoming, you know, out of reach for just your normal everyday working guy like me, right? So you know, what can we do to encourage that? I think the power of zoning there is so big, and so I think you touched on this a little bit, Leslie. You know, exploring our single-family zoning districts and rethinking those things. That concept, that way of thinking, it's been in place for decades and decades and decades, and we haven't really ever given it a second thought. And I think we should, including, you know, there are some single-family zoning districts where it probably be completely appropriate to have some decent, nice duplex sort of units. It's more, you know, yes, it still could be expensive, but it's not going to cost me $1 million. You know, it gives me, you know, and it could be very complementary to the neighborhood, architecturally and otherwise. So that's something else. Possibly thinking about accessory dwelling units. This is also a zoning-related item. So, and to those that don't know what I'm talking about there, it's the concept that, you know, hey, I've got a decent-sized garage out back. It'd be nice to have a little apartment there, or something that my daughter, who just became a teacher, could live in and live independently. Or I'm a senior citizen here in town on a fixed income, and my property taxes keep going up. It keeps getting more expensive for me to be here. Boy, it sure would be nice if I could, you know, rent out a space. And a lot of our zoning does not currently allow those things to happen, and I think that there ought to be some discussion about that. Digital signs, oh my God, yes. Listen, it's, as was said, I think back when it was outlawed, the idea was that they were maybe a little garish. You can have, you know, blinking things and whatever that we don't like. The technology has come quite a ways, and we have the power to regulate, right? We can say we don't want blinking, or, you know, it can only be so bright. Everything we do with lighting, you know, we have a way to control this, and so I could see a nice new gateway sign, digital, that has some sort of announcement about something going on this weekend, Grow Fest, you know, whatever, right? So, so there's that as well. Make sure I haven't missed anything. The comp plan, you know, that comp plan was put in place, when did we last do that? It was 2017. Okay. We've had a pandemic since then. We've been talking a little bit about how retail isn't the same anymore. The way people are living, people working from home. I mean, our current comp plan does not reflect today's reality. And so it seems to me it's almost a must that we relaunch that. I think I've hit on just about all, Mr. Mayor, for now. So thank you very much.
Dave, you good on the notes?
Yes.
Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. A little license. I just have to comment on the extraordinary attendance we have today, and I have to compliment all of you for forsaking the ABBA cover band to be here with us. So that's real dedication to the community.
Because we aren't singing and dancing.
Commended. I think we're the only people in the village who are not over at Official Park. That being said, I'm really liking what I'm hearing here. This is really exciting. This is really encouraging. To some degree, what's old is new. Some of these things have been talked about on and off for 20 years, but that's good. There's a reason why they've been talked about on and off for 20 years. And also, you said interconnected, Commissioner. I'm struck by how much interconnection there is between these topics.
Yes.
And why my mind immediately, well, first of all, there's nothing on the list that I disagree with. But I'm struck by how much of this actually relates to the comprehensive plan. Just about everything that's been said relates to the comprehensive plan. And you're right, the world has changed a lot. But I mean, just for example, the bike and pedestrian plan, or what we used to call transit-oriented design, which could certainly do more with that, is a big part of comprehensive plan. I mean, it's mentioned in the 2017 plan. So that's certainly an appropriate topic for that. Environmental sustainability is also mentioned. Open space is a topic. Private tree ordinance is a topic that has come up in the past, and it's one of those things that I think would be really neat to see if we could do something similar to what was done with historic preservation. Because some might remember that when historic preservation was first promoted or proposed in this village, it met with some resistance.
It did.
But through creativity and familiarity, it's now one of the most successful things we've launched, and we have approaching 30 voluntarily landmarked properties in the village, and now it's so cool to be landmarked that people actually want to get landmarked who don't qualify. That's a huge change of mentality from where it was. So I think that there's probably a very creative path to follow the same way for trees. Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit, I appreciate that and would love to continue to explore that. But I think it's also part of the comprehensive plan. Because our open spaces and our neighborhoods, our zoning, everything all rolls up into the comprehensive plan.
It's comprehensive.
Because it's comprehensive. And sign ordinance, well, I mean, I won't make the same exclamation you did, but I think we've been trying to change the sign ordinance for a long time. There's reasons why we haven't, and good reasons why we haven't, but those reasons are now passed. The original sign ordinance that we're dealing with right now it was originated around the early 2000s, and things were a lot different back then.
Yes, they were.
Technology was a lot different back then. So I am adamant about revisiting, and not just updating or tweaking, but comprehensive, top-to-bottom review of our sign ordinance to address things like, has already been mentioned, outdoor murals. The schools have been asking for outdoor signing, changeable copy for Lord knows how long.
Yep.
The Tivoli is looking at something that would prevent people from having to climb up a ladder in the middle of January and change the sign.
Yes.
Technology allows the letters to change. It would look exactly like the marquee today, so you can still landmark it. See how it all comes together? Interconnected.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of other businesses in town that have been asking for a long time for some modifications and tweaks here and there, and we haven't been able to do it, so the time is nigh, as they say. But again, part of the comprehensive plan. One thing that, of course, I want to point out, and I want to support the comments of my fellow commissioners regarding revisiting or untabling the video gaming discussion, because we're talking about things right now that cost money. So any household or business always talks about not just expenses, but also revenue. And I think it is an opportunity that we need to revisit, because number one, it wasn't really ever voted on. Number one, I think we owe the community that. Number two, this to me is very much like food trucks back in the day. Oh, we can't have food trucks downtown. They'll destroy the downtown. Well, we came up with a solution for where food trucks could be, and everything's been fine. The downtown hasn't failed. But I do think that it's something that we can, I know I'm getting into the details, I apologize, but I think it's something that could be done on a pilot basis, where it would sunset after a period of time, so we can just see, do the demons that some of us fear from having video gaming really manifest themselves or not? So we actually have some real data. But I think, as has already been mentioned, it's an issue where I think it's a lost revenue opportunity, where the revenue comes from outside of the village. It's a voluntary payment. You don't have to do it. So it's like food and beverage and other things. That's always our preference. And the reality is I remember when we first looked at food and beverage tax, we didn't want to do it until every community around us had one. And we were just simply, the money was just being taken by other towns and we were losing out. So at some point in time, regardless of what you think about it, it's here, and we're just leaving money on the table. Money that could go to support some of these other initiatives that I think has already been mentioned by others. So there's that, and then just one last thing, because at some point I'm repeating what others have said, and have said very well. But in addition to the interconnected of all this, the other thing that strikes me, and this is why I'm really in favor of this being part of a comprehensive plan conversation, is two things are very important here. One, a broader community conversation. These things shouldn't be done, particularly private tree ordinances or video gaming, or so as part of a comprehensive community conversation. Inclusive housing, environmental sustainability, transit-oriented development. These are things that the whole community should be encouraged to have a voice in. And so while I certainly appreciate everybody that's here, and thank you for being here. Respect you. These are things that touch everybody. And so encouraging a broader community conversation, I think, is important. So is collaboration. And I know we're getting into not the what, but into the how, so I apologize. But a lot of these things can be done far more effectively, and we've proven over decades that when we collaborate with public and private entities, particularly other governmental entities, that we can really turn these things into force multipliers. So as opposed to doing it, and you mentioned connecting with other systems, but working with other entities, both public and private, can make the impact of these initiatives all that much greater. So I will stop, Mayor, but I'm really excited that sounds like there's a lot of consensus here.
There is a lot of consensus and a long list. I'll add a few things to the list. I'm not going to try and avoid repeating what my colleagues have said. I'm going to frame one thing a little differently. Maine Rogers Fairview, I'm calling that an MRF linkage plan. I think it's beyond, it's really the Fairview, it's underneath the Fairview conversation.
Mayor,
But
could you speak louder?
beyond the Fairview conversation, the linkage to downtown, I think, is more than physical connection. I think it's also that entire Rogers area. And so as we talk about that, I'd like to think of the definition of that area broader than what we might think of it right now. Related to trees, on the public side of things, I think we should do a review of our process for planting trees and how we budget for it and where we plant them. I think there's opportunities to do, I'm going to oversimplify this, and I'm not the arborist in the room, but as you drive down any block, you can see where there could be trees that there aren't. And right now, we sort of don't think of it that way. Something that ties in probably to things others have said already, but I'm going to frame it again a little differently. So standard street cross sections. I think we right now have sort of historically done replacements as opposed to improvements generally. And we've done a little bit more improving over the last few years, but even those have been where sort of the physical elements were already there. So we might have done some additional striping, we might have added some sharrows, but the fact is the curbs were where they were and the sidewalks were already there. I'm thinking more of when we decide we're going to do whatever's in our improvement plan for the next year, that design is driven a little bit by our goals, which include a broader scope. So with curbs, sidewalks, both sides. If there's not curbs, what are we going to do about it? Do we really want gravel? That kind of thing. Downtown, I think we need to, I think it was, Martin, you probably can help me, 94 or so, when that first Lakota drawing showed up. I think we should revisit and rethink. I'm calling it downtown greening, landscape and hardscape. Similar to the comment about trees, I think particularly in the world of changed parking demands and changed habits of commuters and in changed habits of walkers and bikers, I think if we said we were starting from scratch, what would we do different? And an example might be you have places where you stripe out areas on the pavement and you have places where you bump the curbs out and fill them with grass, or not. If we had a different set of goals, we might do that a little differently. And related, very similar to that, is all of our parkways. The public space that we own, the places where we can have an impact right now without having to do any collaboration, although that's a good thing. But all of our parkway spaces are ours, and they're the window to the community, what's important to us and how much do we care about our own property. I think we should improve our standards and expectations along those lines. But again, there's so many interconnected things, whether it's utilities or rights of way, et cetera, that requires more and actual planning than just a conversation in one evening. Related, village sign, gateway sign replacements, I think we should be doing that.
I'll write that down. We are actually, you'll see that as not a primary action item,
Okay.
but an actual project. It's an
All right.
actual project coming to the budget, but we'll still
All
capture
right,
that.
good. None too soon. Public art space leasing program. I've talked about this in the past. An example was that I think I circulated at one point was Sioux Falls, or Sioux City, I can't remember which one. But the idea is a little bit like our outdoor dining. We set up arrangements with people to lease that space. We end up with sort of complete control. We can shut it down or move it if we have to, and it would be similar. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but think about, you know, statues and such things, but they're on pedestals and we're leasing the space to people. But it provides for the opportunity to get it into the public view and enhance our neighborhoods.
Sorry, did you say public art leasing?
Space leasing.
Space leasing.
Space leasing, yep.
Thanks.
Another thing that I think is bigger than what it might sound like on paper, but I'd like to see us review our minimum parking, bike accessibility, and green space regulations for private development. I'm talking about commercial development. We've had a couple of developments over the last couple of years where, for instance, outlots in existing malls, and we've asked people to enhance pedestrian access. But we still have a set of standards should somebody build a new development. And I think we probably, again, in an ever-changing world, could adjust those in such a way that we would be more accessible and greener. And then the last one, I apologize for the clunkiness of the description. I'm not sure how to say it, but bear with me. We have, in our comp plan as it sits today, we talk about nodes, commercial nodes. So think 63rd and Main, as an example. There's certain attributes we hope those nodes have. But there are a bunch of places, 63rd and Main, along 75th Street, along 63rd Street, in the commercial areas along Ogden Avenue, where what there isn't is any sort of public node. There isn't a space. You can have a sidewalk down Ogden, but man, it's a tough walk if you go from one end to the other. And so I don't know, we talked a little bit on Ogden Avenue TIF closeout about things like spaces where the village would actually take public space like a dead-end street and put charging stations. I don't know what it looks like. But the idea that we would somehow incorporate some sort of public nodes into those commercial areas, because they're non-existent right now. And if we really think people are going to walk up and down Ogden Avenue, they need to have something more than just pavement, 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 and driveway entrance, driveway entrance, driveway entrance. So that's my list. You feel like that makes enough sense to write notes?
Oh, yes, we've captured, yeah, a lot of stuff, and I think we understand them. I saw other staff members taking notes, so I think, yeah, we have a good list here.
There is a little bit, guys, element, we're going to go to the audience in a minute, but there is a little bit of an element to speak now or forever hold your peace to this process. This stuff here is a lot of work and would have to be, even if you decide you were going to do it all, you'd still need to put it in some kind of an order, right? So the staff will be trying to find some way to put some additional context so that we can start doing that. So we do need to leave tonight and not next week shoot emails in to Dave saying, hey, would you add this to the list? Right? Because we are going to have to start putting some kind of qualifiers on all this stuff. So with that in mind, we'll come back to everybody at the end, but please be thinking about that. We're not going to keep adding over the next couple of weeks. Big crowd, and I like everybody that wants to speak to have a chance to speak. So I'm just going to kind of start scanning that way and raise your hand if you want to say something. And Mr. Bashful.
At least I didn't go up to get a picture taken. Downers as it exists now, if you're comfortable riding a bike on the street, is a nice place to ride. I guess, if you're a transportation planner, you'd say 8% of the citizens are comfortable. 30% would never even think about getting on a bike. That leaves 60% who are willing to think about it. So I'm happy to see members of the bike club here supporting the initiative. And it's better to burn fat than burn gas. You get 3% of the trips, and all these trips are short. 3% of trips, if they were bikes, congestion is reduced dramatically, and I think you guys on the council get it, so I really appreciate I appreciate what's been done so far. I live near Carpenter, the beautiful new street with the Sharrows, and I now know how to stop at Grove and Carpenter. That's good. But we've done well, and I hope we keep going.
I'm not going to comment on everything, but I wanted to just mention something, Bill, you made me think of. I was reading something the other day, and you know how many times we think to ourselves, man, I'm stuck in traffic? We are the traffic.
Yeah.
Process it that way for a minute. You know, it's a very different angle. Just going to continue around the room. Please.
I just have a quick comment. Glenn Hoffman, 840 Maple Avenue in Downers. And my question relates to implementation of school zones, in particular between Washington Avenue and Main Street, if you're going from east to west or west to east. We've got a high concentration of new development in that area, a lot of dogs too, and we also have 2 schools. We've got Downers Grove Christian School, and we've got Lincoln Center, which has preschool elements and is somewhat publicly funded. So I just don't know what the process is, if that's a petition process for consideration of either lowering the speed limit or getting a school zone implemented. We've got 30-mile-an-hour zones on either side of that before you cross Main Street, and it's kind of a hot area. So I don't believe there's any speed limit posted there, so it's a little bit nebulous, but it's 30 miles an hour on either end of that, so it's a little dicey of an area, so just something for consideration. Thanks.
If I could jump in there. I believe this resident or others in that area have contacted staff members, and we actually have started a conversation at the staff level, which will probably make its way either through just a staff level implementation or maybe a policy discussion. But just so the council knows, that conversation has begun at the staff level.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing it up. Please.
Yeah, I wanted to comment. Bill and I was at the farmer's market on Saturday. We were promoting bikes. Probably the number one comment we had when we were there was from newcomers that came here that said there's no place to ride where, as compared to Naperville and other places, or they just didn't feel safe about riding. And so that was just the overriding comment that we got, that not a good place to ride in Downers Grove. Second, I'd like to point statistically that bikes through time has hardly moved in terms of the trips people make to the grocery store or commuting until the game changer, which is e-bikes. I've got a brother, anecdotal, but he's never owned a bicycle in his whole adult life. He now has 2 e-bikes, and they do ride to the grocery store on it. So I call it Trek in preparation for this meeting, and they don't keep true statistics on it, but they estimate about 25% of their volume now is e-bikes. These are people that, the bike industry has mostly been selling to the same people over and over and over again. These e-bikes are bringing people that weren't on a bike before. And they're now finding this what they want to do. You're seeing some of these very innovative European type of bikes where the kids are in the front and the families are doing it, and how heartwarming that is. So, but it's that story about build it and they will come. If you make it safe, people will use it. And I always like to use by analogy, when you drive, you don't communicate with anybody. And if you do, you're probably throwing out the middle finger. But when you're on a bicycle, you're waving to people you don't even know. And they're waving back to you. You're seeing kids, you're hearing birds. It's all good. There's no, people think of all the negatives when they think about bikes, but really all the positives override all those negatives. And so, and then there's the environmental about it. So we're right now daily hearing about weather extremes, and we're going to need it. And even if you don't believe in that environmental, just think one hurricane placed right in the Gulf could knock out the refining capacity that would double our gasoline prices. Then people would start jumping on their bikes. So that's where having this vision, you would see it coming into play. So that scenario I just told you, it's not people are going to blame politics when that happens. But it's not politics. Shell tried to sell the refinery, couldn't find any buyer to buy it, so they just closed it down. And nobody's going to build a new one because, whole countries are outlawing combustion cars for 2030, whatever the date is, but they just don't see that horizon to have the payback. So it's a reality that's out there. So anyways, I'm saying as much as I can that, yes, have a vision and start implementing, make it safe, and that's what we saw at the farmer's market. People echoing, if you build it, we'll come. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
All right, I'm really excited about all of your comments tonight, your wish lists or your hopes, your spaghetti on the wall, and many of the comments that talked about connecting the comprehensive plan to so many of these things. I want to throw in that sustainability is part of that as well. I mean, it ties into just about everything you guys have been talking about. The bike plan, pedestrian plan, I think that is, long overdue to look at connecting to other communities. I too am a cyclist, and one of the biggest problems is getting north to the Prairie Path. I would love an easy path. I've done it many times, and I never feel quite safe. What's there? And I'm comfortable riding on roads, so I'd love to see that kind of a pedestrian bike plan in place. But our mission, I hope that you see, is where are we as a community 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and your comprehensive plan needs to be reviewing that sustainability. How can we make our future citizens in a better place? Many of you talk from time to time about thanking previous councils about what they've done with the traffic plans or the stormwater plans. You're on that cusp with the sustainability plans. Do what you can for future generations, residents of our community. So I hope you continue to hope. I'm excited that it's on the potential priority action item, but that the steps that the manager outlaid, where it implement the guidelines of the Greenest Regional Compact, the reestablishment of the Environmental Concerns Commission, and a staff member who knows how to help you through the whole process. And if that includes a consultant as well, fantastic. But we have a lot of great things here in Downers Grove that you've touched on many times. But to sustain them in a sustainability plan, it touches on all these things. Your Fairview plan, your all of these pedestrian plan, all of these work together, and sustainability should run through all of them. Thanks.
Thank you. Keep moving this way. Move out to the corner. Okay, please.
Hi. This is my first time attending a meeting. I just moved to Downersville about a year ago, so now I just want to get more involved in the community, learn more about it. Help wherever I can, contribute wherever I can. And my name's Emily. Nice to meet everyone.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here. Please.
Well, I usually, and of course I did again tonight, prepare a lengthy speech, thinking I would be making it in the formal council room at a lectern. So what I will do is I want to read a few bits and pieces from it, and then I will email to every council member my full speech rather than boring the whole room with all of it. But the 2 points that I want to address are inclusionary housing and murals in Downers Grove. At the June 20th council meeting, several speakers proposed adding a requirement to the RFP for Lot 2 of the Civic Center project that 10% of the building's units be affordable housing. The council decided to make this an option rather than a requirement. While a small step forward, I suspect most of us here know optional inclusionary housing is unlikely to be an effective tool for increasing affordable housing or advancing racial equity. During the discussion about this issue, council members agreed affordable housing is an important and relevant issue, meriting a larger, more substantial discussion around the need for inclusionary housing and its relationship to diversity and income levels in Downers Grove. It's easy to say a few affordable units won't solve the problem, but that's like saying I won't vote because my vote won't matter. My answer to both issues is collectivity is how we make a difference, both through voting and by each town doing what it can. So as part of the planning process, I asked the council to commit to addressing housing affordability in Downers Grove by adding this issue to the plan and specifying a timeline for doing so. The second issue that I want to address tonight is arts and culture, which some of you know is very important to me. Before COVID, I was co-leader of the art department, a collection of local artists dedicated to making Downers Grove a welcoming and nurturing place for the arts. We seek ways to bring back the socially connected aspects of the arts post-COVID, and we ask that a review of the village sign ordinance be a priority action item for the 23-25 plan. We would like to see the sign ordinance language revised to allow murals on Downers Grove buildings. While I know about the lawsuit that has made the council wary of revising the sign ordinance, I'm confident that that concern can be addressed while crafting language permitting murals on buildings. As Michael Jordan said, obstacles don't have to stop you. If you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb it, go through it, or work around it.
Thanks, Robin.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have some comments. I'm looking at that board and I'm thinking, yeah, let's go. Let's do it all. I know that's probably not realistic, so I wanted to put out there that my hot topics are, like Robin and many others here, affordable inclusive housing. That's a real hot topic for me. I work at Hope's Front Door, and so I have an opportunity to work with people within the greater community who cannot afford to live in Downers Grove, even though they work at Good Sam Hospital, even though they work, over for Home Depot. It's not for one of the district schools. That's a real problem, and something that we've let just lay there a little bit too long. I think it's something that we have to show leadership on. I'm also very excited to hear that so many of you are supportive of revising the signage ordinance. I had a real problem with it when it was passed, but it is passed. But now we can look at it again and tweak it and make changes that are appropriate for where we are today. I really love the bike pedestrian ideas. I have been a big supporter of complete community ideas, and so this is adding into that type of a concept, if you will. And community grants, again, I work at Hope's Front Door, so I want more money to help the people in the community. And I have to say that, so those are my big, strong ones, but I really like talking about the Fairview Avenue corridor, and also exploring how we can continue to have outdoor dining, but in a much more friendly way. Thank you. Oh, and I'm Linda.
Thank you.
Laura Temple, 1115 Prairie. I'll just say ditto, 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 ditto on that. When you said e-bikes, that made me think, I don't know if we have a rule here. I have seen a golf cart in town, a 6-person golf cart. My hometown in Indiana, it is the way to go. And they're electric, so there's that. They're unregulated, they're dangerous. I'm not for them, but I don't know if we specifically don't allow them on our streets or not. The case could be made. I mean, they're electric, they're green, yay, but and so when you said electric bike, I was like, yeah, they're golf carts. So, I mean, just if it's not a rule and you want to think about making it a rule or not, that they can't be on the streets. I mean, anyway, there's a 6-seater one that I've seen on Forest Avenue at least twice this summer.
I've seen it on Main Street.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
Yeah.
It gets around.
the kids, I mean, they put their kids.
I don't think that's a legal vehicle.
Thank you, Laura. It
Was that
is-
in,
These are why these are subjects that are going to go through this kind of a process.
Yeah.
Right, I had a couple residents contact me about e-bikes because they got 16, 17, 18-year-olds riding e-bikes 35 miles an hour on the sidewalk.
They've got fight.
Which is a little rough when you're 5 and on a scooter.
Motorized.
So there's,
If they're doing that, they're in great shape, because the fastest ones cut off at 28, and most of them won't help you past 20.
anyway, the specific model attributes aside, that's why these are going to go through this kind of process, because there are sort of constantly changing needs, changing technology, et cetera, and the existing environment doesn't necessarily fit that. But how would you make it is part of what we have to try and sort through. Continue.
Hi, Hillary Dang, 433 Wilson Street. I am very intrigued with the whole Fairview idea, since I live very nearby that. So certainly I'm looking forward to that being part of the comprehensive plan discussion, so there's lots of neighborhood input on what the plans are and where they might go. And I definitely think the idea of this pedestrian connectivity is absolutely essential part of that conversation. So very excited to hear more about what ideas come from that. I'm very interested in the sign ordinance being revisited for a number of reasons, including improvement in our, and actually introduction of public art into our community. I work in Aurora. It's absolutely beautiful in Aurora. The murals, the landscaping, it's made a huge difference to their downtown, to have really well-known and very talented artists contribute to that community, and even their local artists as well. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And I am very interested in how we're going to continue to bring in revenue for our stormwater improvements. We're talking about, setbacks and issues with stormwater. It's not going to get any better. It's just going to get worse. So I do think we have to continue to be really cognizant of how we're addressing setbacks, building sizes, and runoff, because it's a big problem still. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
I've got stuff, but yeah, go ahead.
No, we'll go
All right, so I'm Lisa Koscius, live down on 61st Street. You've seen me probably here before talking about environmental issues. I want to encourage the council with everything that you look at, either on this list or other issues that you're looking at, to kind of have a triple bottom line. So the financial bottom line, a social bottom line, and then the environmental bottom line. So, I mean, everything you've talked about tonight. So you're talking about, a pedestrian or a bike path that's going to connect two places. Well, there's the financial, there's how much that costs. There's also the benefit, so it's going to connect things and maybe, boost the economy, get people going from one place to another, maybe spend some money. But then you have the social aspect, when you look at that, like how is that going to bring people together? How is that going to get them out of their house and doing things with people? And then, how do you make it accessible to people of different incomes or neighborhoods? Does it need to have a ramp for people that are disabled? All that stuff. But then finally, the one that I think gets forgotten is the environmental impact. So you're going to make the bike path. Well, you're going to probably have to dig up some land, right, and pave it. Well, what's that impact of that going to be? Are you going to have lighting that's on all night long that's going to disrupt the birds and all the other things that live there that we all love to have around the town? Or are you going to think about it and use the shades and the different wavelengths of light, that kind of thing? Are you going to put grass there that then has to be mowed? Or are you going to put native plantings that are just going to stay there and look beautiful every year? So I encourage you with every single thing. I mean, you can look at it and go, the video gaming, there's a social aspect to that too, which a lot of us are worried about, but there's a financial aspect too. So I'd really like you to think about that triple bottom line. I also wanted to propose you might think of it as under the environmental or sustainability plan that we'd like to see, but I would argue it's really in a way separate, and that would be some type of a climate adaptation plan or climate readiness plan. It's not in question. We are seeing warming. We can anticipate higher temperatures. If you look for a house right now on Realtor.com or Zillow or any of these places, you're going to see at the bottom now in red, there's a little climate risk warning, and it will tell you what the average temperature increase is going to be by 2050 or so, what the flood risk is going to be. So we can expect that our stormwater systems, they're already taxed. I know that's been a huge issue here. And it's going to get worse. We're going to have more periods of drought and more periods of sudden storm water. So I think that needs to be looked at in terms of infrastructure, not anymore to even prevent climate change, which of course we want to do, but to adapt to it and be resilient and not have it cost money later. And then the social aspect or the health aspect, do we have enough cooling stations? That sort of thing. So what is the impact on our elderly folks when we have that much heat? So that was really the main thing that I wanted to bring up. And then also I'm really pleased to hear the mayors talk about the public tree planting process and practices, and hope that we can start looking at the types of trees that we're planting and whether they're native species that are going to help our environment, and also how much shade they're going to provide. Another thing that will help our resiliency when the temperatures will rise at least somewhat.
Thank you.
I am pleased that Fairview and 75th Street are on this list, and I'm hoping very high priorities, because I think that those are opportunities to really make a difference as to the whole atmosphere of Downers Grove. I listened to all the enthusiasm about the bike plan and the pedestrian plan, and Chris, pedestrian first. I think you are excluding an enormous section of the community in all of this. There are, and I know we've got the advocates here, there are a lot of people who don't ride bikes. There are a lot of people who can't walk. And I, for one, I mean, I go down to the to come in, I can't walk to town to carry my groceries home or shop. I drive downtown. I come to the market. I can't find a parking space because, among other reasons, the restaurants have taken over the parking spaces. There's not enough parking in Downers Grove. I pay taxes too. I want a place to park and make my interactions in Downers Grove convenient so that I can participate in Downers Grove. I don't have to go to the things downtown. I don't have to shop downtown. I can shop out where I can get a parking space or at the mall. But I think that the pie in the sky, isn't it great, we have all this pedestrian stuff, is going to negatively impact a whole segment of and not everybody's as fit as you all are over here, but a whole lot of people are going to be very unhappy to have downtown cut off for access and to be able to use the restaurants and everything, and the library that need more parking by itself. So parking is one of my big hot buttons, and I think that your enthusiasm is charming, but you're really affecting how other people can use the town. So at least that's limited to those topics for right now. But there are many things about the plan that I think are exciting, but don't forget us. We don't ride bikes. We're not going to ride bikes in winter. We're not going to ride bikes in the rain. And by the way, if y'all bikers would follow the rules of the road, it would be helpful, because I can't tell you how many times I've almost hit somebody.
Same with cars.
Okay. We got it. Thank you.
Well, I've been very glad to hear the number of times the word tree has been mentioned, and my ears prick up every time. I was pleased. That was a couple months ago now to hear our mayor talking during a village council meeting about the Chicago Region Trees Initiative report, which the last survey came out. The results came out a few months ago, and Downers Grove has some things to point to as pride there compared to DuPage County on average, and that's a success that we should be able to build on. And there's a lot of ways to do that, one way is to take another look at how we measure success in terms of tree coverage in Downers Grove. I mean, we keep account. We do very well at keeping account of the public trees, but there's other aspects of that we probably could also monitor in terms of tree coverage, tree biomass, and there's all kinds of expertise that can be tapped over at the Arboretum and the CRTI to help us do that. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Awesome. Gosh, I think I'm last. Thank you so much for having us, to the mayor and the council, and I'm so impressed with the thoughtfulness at this table and the thoughtfulness in the room. This is really exciting. There's so many things that make me so proud to live in Downers Grove, and events like this are absolutely one of them, right? I mean, all of these are great ideas. I did hear a couple themes that just really, really struck with me, and then I swear I'll add to them, but I just want to read back some of your own words. The time is nigh. A lot of these issues are interconnected. How much do we care about our properties? If you don't make something part of the plan, if you don't bring in external expertise, right? Those were themes that were mentioned. The time is nigh for the environment, right? Like there's been a lot of great discussion today, and so many great ideas today that touch on our environment. And I know we have options 1, 2, 3A and 3B. And option 3B sounds like, oh wow, it must be like a really, really crazy, oh, that's the biggest option. But option 3B, right, to say, hey, we should just have a sustainability plan. And we probably are gonna need some help with that. Like, that's not, in my mind, on a scale, it's like a scale of like 1 to a zillion, and that's reasonable, right? Like, I know it's the biggest number, but I think that's a really reasonable next step for us. Yeah, I think we all just love this town so much, and I think protecting it and ensuring that, we're taking advantage of these no regrets options. It doesn't have to be that tomorrow, and I probably should joke that everyone's on an e-bike. I know that's touchy. I know we got a lot of perspectives on that, but right, I mean, there are no regrets things that we can do. Environmental choices that we can make that are no cost or that even save money, right? Like native plants, right? And replacing lawn that has to be fertilized and mowed and is really a burden financially, right? With like some cute clover. I mean, there are ways that we, if we had a sustainability plan and if we knew what all our options were, we could prioritize the ones that, are no regrets, that are really, easy, quick wins. And we could also figure out, well, how do we need to invest for the future and what are the best ways to do that are consistent with our core plan, right? Because we don't just want to do sustainability things here and there in isolation. We want to ensure that, hey, wait a minute, as we're thinking about these big projects, they should be additive. They should have the environment taken into account as part of them. There are sustainability initiatives that could help us, with all kinds of things, with saving money, with doing good for the triple bottom line, including, social and in addition to environmental, could help us bring more, acclaim to our town, more tourism. If we think about like different fests we could have. I think there's a world of possibility, and it feels like, just having a plan and just having some expertise in creating that plan feels like a very, very key next step, and one that I hope we could all agree is pretty reasonable. We can figure out what that plan is and make sure it's the right one for us, but I think just having one feels really important.
Thank you. All right, the whole speak now, forever hold your peace thing. It's not really, of course, totally true, but it is the intent of how we're trying to work this process. So anybody from the council want to add to the list or underscore something, Chris?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, we've got a list here of things that we've put out. Some fine tuning is the process for the next couple of weeks as these things become part of our next discussions, right? You're talking about speak now in terms of adding anything new, but we have some things here that have been thrown against the wall that we likely have to discuss, maybe amongst ourselves, maybe with staff to understand. I just want to make sure that process is.
It is. I
Okay.
fully expect that staff
Yeah.
will be reaching out to council members
Great.
to clarify things they heard tonight, to try
Sure.
and build that more complete picture of whatever we're going to discuss.
Okay. I have nothing new to add.
Well, if it is speak now, forever hold your peace.
Not
then,
for you, it's not.
Joseph's Creek runs under the downtown in the big two. I think we ought to open it up and make it like a river walk.
You can't take him anywhere. You really can't.
Wow. That is some serious spaghetti, man.
I started to write it down. That's it.
All right. So, on that note, is there a motion to adjourn for the night?
Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.